Okay, we are live. This is Keith with How to Build Your Own Home every Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard. What's that?
But the light, they can't
Yeah, there's
see
kind of
because the light.
a bright light there.
There, no.
That's good. You're right there. Okay, sorry for the little delay there. We're going to get going here. I want to start off with just a question, and I want to maybe get some feedback, get some responses. That would be very helpful. And I think it's the area that a lot of owner builders just kind of put behind their head and they don't want to think about it. And it has to do with utilities. I've seen some people buy land without any knowledge of anything regarding utilities, and others buy land and incrementally work to get utilities to a parcel. So let me talk about two stories to help you understand what I'm talking about. I'm working with some clients and it's some land really out in the outskirts, a town north of here, out in the fields. There's no paved road. There's no city sewer. There's no power to the site. Power has to be brought to the site. And there's no gas either. And water is in a well. And so a well means you've got to have electricity to pump the water up. And then on top of that, the well is kind of a community well, and nobody has tapped into it. It's just sitting there. So the first person who builds has to do some infrastructure, sump pump and all that to pull the water out. And so when you buy land, you have to really think about these things, because each one of them is in multiples of thousands of dollars. To bring power to these job sites, it's probably going to be around $28,000 for the first job, and then maybe another $10,000 for the next job. Two jobs real close to each other. And so these are things that a lot of times owner builders do not think about. And on top of that, septic can be a real cost to your overall build. Now keep in mind, a septic can be anywhere from $14,000 to $30,000, depending upon how deep it is. Now, if you already have sewer, which is the other job that I'm working on, it's even up in the mountains, but it's actually tapped into a local sewer system. And so the owner of the property purchased the property, then over time finally got sewer to the property before they paved the road. Now, keep in mind, the road was paved after he was able to tap into the sewer line, bring it up the road to his parcel, and it's capped, ready to rock and roll. On top of that, he's got a 200 amp panel service down meter panel right there down by the road. So all he has to do is tap into that with a long turn 90 and bring power to the home site. And then gas is also there, capped right there at the entrance of his property. So all he has to do is trench. And a 6-foot trench usually will work for projects like that, where I have power on one side, gas on the other, and sewer and water somewhere in the middle. And if there's low voltage, separate that as well. That makes it very quick and very accessible to connect to the utility system. And what's really neat is there's no perk test, there's no septic. Anytime you can buy land that's already hooked up to a sewer system, that's a real plus, because you're actually saving on some costs. Will that increase the price of the lot? Most likely it will. But it's a headache you don't need to deal with unless you're in the outskirts. And I have a lot of owner builders that actually build in rural areas. But I have a lot of owner builders that are building in cities. I have a lot of owner builders in Los Angeles County for some reason, and they have to hook into the city. But there are some they've got a septic system. So what I'm talking about is be very cautious on the home site that you purchase. How easy is it to get utilities to the job, to the actual build site? There's one other thing that a lot of owner builders don't look at, and that is how far away is the fire hydrant. Now, a lot of jurisdictions will have a minimum distance from each build site for a fire hydrant. I had a build many years ago, and the fire hydrant had to be within 500 feet of the home. And we found out that it was beyond that by like 30 feet. So we literally adjusted the placement of the home site. We had 2 acres to deal with. So we moved the home closer to the street, within that 30, 35 feet closer to the fire hydrant. And then we avoided having to put in a new fire hydrant to close the gap. And what's the fire hydrant? Those are around $6,000 to $8,000. That's back then, just the hydrant itself. Then to install the couplers and everything else, that's a whole nother beast. So look at these things, and the best thing you can do is talk to a building official and say, hey, I want to build a home here. What's required? What do I need to bring to the parcel? Can you help me? Do you have a punch list of items that I need to consider? And go through the investigation. I was looking at some land and that I was interested in, but I know it's a real headache. This parcel is a real nightmare. And it went under contract. And I looked at my wife and I says, don't worry, I don't think it's going to stay under contract because there are some major headaches with this parcel. And lo and behold, it fell out of contract. It's now back in the market. Because I know people get into it. They go through the due diligence period. They lock up the land. They go through the due diligence period and find out, oh my goodness, there's a lot of bad stuff with this parcel. You can walk a piece of land all you want, but you may not even see stuff until you go through the investigation process. And you find out there's easements and all kinds of things running through that parcel, of which constrict your ability to do what you might want to do on the parcel. So it's okay to lock up a land, but make sure you give yourself due diligence. How much due diligence time would you suggest? 3 weeks?
30 days.
30 days. So give yourself 30 days. Once you lock up some property, give yourself for 30 days.
Due diligence?
Yeah.
Typically it's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
But land is different because
Yeah.
you got to get different people.
Yeah, land could be 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
A regular home could be 2 weeks, a due diligence period.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's unknown and you don't know, like we were looking at some land up on the mountain, I think 2 years ago, and we found out that the water was quite a distance away. And that was going to be very costly. And I couldn't just bring a 1-inch line. I had to bring a full 8-inch line to the parcel because I have to bring a fire hydrant at the same time. That just made it cost prohibitive. And then on top of that, I'm helping all the other property owners along the way. And a lot of them aren't going to want to cough up the extra money to kind of make their parcels developable. So look at stuff very cautiously. And do your due diligence. And it's really the utilities that really make or break a deal. On top of that, it's easements and right-of-ways, excavation costs. It just starts to add up. So make sure you look at the home site selection checklist. It's free at howtobuildyourownhome.com. There's the link. That checklist is the one I give for free because it saves the most headache. And I just want to make sure people have that. So if you haven't downloaded that or check it out, it's for free on the home site at How to Build Your Own Home. It's really on the main page. So check that out. And I spent a lot of time creating that checklist. It's got a lot of detail to it, and it will save your bacon. Let's start taking some questions real quick here. I'm kind of in the corner today. Carissa. Hello, Carissa. Which is more cost effective? Slab with storm shelter or walkout basement? Land is a gentle slope, prime for walkout according to local excavator, but I prefer slab with storm shelter. Really good question. Really good question. It depends on how much space you want below. If you're saying storm shelter, are you talking about a food shelter or a food cellar of some kind? If that's the case, I was thinking about a design where it'd be slab on grade, but I wanted a cold food cellar for food, and it wouldn't be a full 9-foot or 8-foot ceiling. I would just go down there from maybe a 6.5-foot ceiling and just to store stuff.
She's in Northwest Missouri.
Northwest Missouri.
Shelter, so they can go down.
Yeah, as long as it's capped. So if you can cap that with rebar and concrete, I would go for that, and I wouldn't go for a basement. Because a basement, when that wind comes through, it's going to take everything, even the floor trusses, off. If you want a storm shelter, you're going to want to have that part of the whole concrete encasement, and that means the whole thing is concrete and rebar. I would prefer that. That would be really advantageous to have that, and have it accessed from within inside the home, not like you see in a lot of movies where they run outside, then they run into the storm shelter, and then they go down and shut the doors. You really want that inside the home, with a storage element where there's food and stuff like that. And you can do that. It only needs to be maybe 10 by 14, something like that, underneath the slab, and have it engineered that way. You can do that. Wouldn't be a problem. Shouldn't be hard to do.
She added this.
Okay. And then sadly, OmniBlock is not a reasonable cost option here. New Mexico, Missouri, Northwest Missouri. Other considerations for planning design specific to part-time home. I just met a gentleman today or yesterday, and he was there. A lot of people are trying to invent some stuff that's more affordable, but can withstand high winds like that. Me, I would just go with a gable roof, single story. I wouldn't go a second or third story on a home like that, because you're like a wind sail out there. And then I'd go with some trusses, and I would beef up my sheathing quite a bit, put some hurricane straps on there, and I try to beef up that roof as much as I possibly can. Go with 2x6 construction, double top plate. That would help out. Then strap that whole home down with more straps than you probably would consider. One of the reasons why a lot of homes get torn apart is because there's no hurricane straps. There's no strapping on the base of the foundation, and it's not held down. And they got really thin OSB, really thin sheeting, and wind can just the pressure of the tornado just comes by and does a number on that. Also, aluminum shingles, 140 mile an hour sustained gust versus asphalt shingles, which are going to flap off and get destroyed really quick. A lot of things to consider there, but yeah, it'd be nice if you could do OmniBlock, but you can't, I guess, in that area. Okay, next question. Matthew, with the housing market being so volatile and potentially heading toward a recession, do you think it's wise to go ahead and purchase land plans and start building now, or should we wait? Here's the pros and cons. Okay. Labor is flatlining. It's not going up. And despite what some people say, there are a lot of people that are looking for cash to work. And there's more opportunity to find good quality work now than there was 2-3 years ago. So that's in your favor. And keep in mind, the labor cost is 30 to 40% of the cost of the home. Material cost is the rest. So if your labor costs are hungry for work, that's 30 to 40% right there. And then lumber alone has flatlined, and it's down substantially from its highs during the COVID era, almost by 30%. So even though interest rates are hard, they're high, and money's hard to get, it's actually easier and better to build now, provided your income is in a good situation. So that's the real key, is if your income and your employment are all solid, now is a really good time to build. Seems counterintuitive to the market, but it's actually true. I've seen it over and over and over again. I've actually built better during down times than up times. So I hope that gives you some feedback on that. Okay, Honey Kafina, I haven't seen you in a while, honey. Good to see you. Question, OmniBlock walls are an R20. With the walls, is there a need for horizontal bond beams, which will reduce the R value? Adding electrics and plumbing will also reduce the R values. You can't think of it in terms of R values when it comes to OmniBlock. You have to think in terms of effective mass. Here's an Omni wall right here, and I didn't have to do this, but I glued with mud drywall to the OmniBlock. So I've got probably almost 3 inches of effective mass, which means as the air is working and keeping it cool in here, I'm banking all that energy inside the first layer of the wall. Then after that, I've got polyiso foam, and then beyond that is what you're talking about. That's where the rebar and the concrete is on those grid patterns. And where the grid is, that's where that second layer of polyiso is taken out. And then there's rebar and concrete. That's not going to reduce your R value at all. There's a thermal break through the entire 8-inch wall. So it's slow. If you look at an OmniBlock wall, the concrete goes down like this and curves over and down and around. So it slows down the transfer of heat and cold from one side to the other. It's pretty phenomenal. And even though you have that grid pattern, which fills with concrete and rebar, you still have the other thermal break with the other polyiso insert. So it's, and on top of that is you're banking all of that heat and coolness in the summer and heat in the winter. You're banking it inside the thickness of the wall. Imagine it this way. I'm writing notes to talk about insulation. And most people don't really think about the fact that most homes are just like 2x4 or 2x6 if they're lucky. And it's just drywall, just barely a half inch of drywall. That's not an effective thermal mass body. But here you've got drywall and an inch and a half of the concrete for the omniblock. And then you've got insulation, another inch and a half of concrete, then the insulation or rebar, then another inch of concrete. Those are thermal break, mass density, thermal break, mass density. And that's really the effective wall, is if you can create thermal breaks in the wall. That's why I like the new IRC code that's asking people to put a full insulated blanket on the outside of a home. At least 1 inch will give you R3, but it's the thermal breaking that's being impacted. You're not having conductivity directly through that insulation as much, right into the sheeting, right into the other blown in insulation, and then all the way into the drywall. The more you can slow down that heat and cold transfer, the better off you're going to be. Long about explaining too much there, but I just wanted to help people understand the real power of a proper envelope. And we're going to talk a lot more about that with some builds coming up. Okay, Josh, can I found the mesh KM coatings on the foundation transition on the deck before framing inspection? Yeah, you can put that on there. It's only about 6 inches up and about 5 inches onto the deck. Get that on there, and the inspector will actually not have any issue with that. And then they can put the J channel on top of that and then start either your stucco or your batten board or whatever else you're putting on top of that. Make sure you have a full inch of gap between the deck and your fascia material, and that gives you the clearance. But before all that happens, I put all that product in there. That way you can hose the water on it, and water is not going to get into the building or down below into the substrate. So, okay, next question. Peyton, yes, Keith, any advice or knowledge on utilities or finishes would be appreciated. Utilities is, I talked about that, but finishes, I like stuff that's Class A fire rated on the outside of a home that can withstand the torch at it for like an hour. Mineral wool is one of those products. There's going to be a lot of issues with fires down the road. It's just the way things are. And we've seen things in Hawaii and California and other parts of the world. Just take a flamethrower to it and it just gets burnt down in liquid time. So anytime I can do the outside would be good. Finishes on the outside. Finishes on the inside, my daughter's, she's really good at that. I'm like in a post I gave 2 weeks ago, I'm a durability guy. So I love to build for durability, for lasting quality. Like this home I'm in, it's going to be around for a very long time. The inside finishes may change, but the actual structure itself, from roof to wall system, it's not going anywhere. And the roof system looks brand new after a rainstorm without any dust on it. Looks brand new, like it's been there just a few weeks. So I like that. Josh, I checked out at Roofer Supply again for the 24-inch mesh for the deck, and they only have 4 to 6 inches or 36. That is a 600-foot roll. They said they no longer carry the 24-inch. Could I just use 6-inch and not overlap? No, you need to overlap it. If you don't overlap it, you're not going to have a proper bond. But just keep in mind, you're going to see that crease. It's going to show, which means that you're going to want to put another second or third coat of primer on there to hopefully bury that. And then you need to put an extra coat or two of the finish coat on top of that. I never did that, and it showed. But if I were to do decks again with that product, I would do multiple covers. And that's what they ask for. I just never put that many coats on. So you have to.
Shows the line, so you have to be perfect.
Yeah, you have to get it just right. So.
It shows the line.
Okay, next question. Peyton. So county is somewhat easier code-wise, but city has less to worry about, i.e. septic systems. Yes. There's some septics in some cities. Not all of them have sewer systems, but most of them do have a city sewer system that are incorporated. But county is more lenient, a little easier to deal with, generally speaking, than some. The bigger the metropolitan area, the more headache you're going to have with permitting, and the more expensive it is to build in that particular area, the more costly it's going to be with the permitting. So I wouldn't be building in Newport Beach, California. The students that have gone through that, it's been some of the most painful experiences I've ever seen. And they're constantly asking me questions or asking for a consult. So you don't need to go through that headache. So if you can build in an area where there's less of a headache, county jurisdiction.
How did they find out?
Go into the permitting office. That's how you find out, and ask for, can you give me a list of all the requirements for a permit? And that list is going to tell you everything. How many of you have been in college and you get a syllabus from a professor and the syllabus is like 9 pages long? And how many of you had a professor where the syllabus is 1 page? That says everything. So sometimes you're going to go into a permitting office and it's 15 pages long on all the things you need to do. And sometimes it's just a bullet list of like 9 things. You just want the 9 things. You don't want the full book. So just go into a permitting office and ask them, and they'll print it up for you. Okay. Okay, Michael, when hiring subs, is it advisable to put payment in escrow to be paid upon completion? No, that's just a headache. You don't need to put it in escrow. If you're working with a bank, they're already escrow. They're already have all the money in escrow, and they're just going to release the money when you approve it to be released. Otherwise, who's going to be responsible for letting go of the money? You're still responsible. If it's escrow, they're going to ask you, hey, is it okay to pay this? And it's up to you. You say, yeah, they're done. I looked at it. I inspected everything. It's all good. So
And if you're paying cash, just create a separate account
yeah, and if you're paying cash, just create a separate account.
for your building.
Use your cash first and then come into the loan later. But remember,
Get your loan first.
get your loan first. We've had that nightmare with a couple of students who start a home using their own cash and figure they'll get a loan later, but they can't. You can't get a loan during construction. You have to get it before you start construction, but not use it until you use your money first. And every bank's different on how they do that. In fact, they want you to deposit that money into the full escrow account first. So talk with your lenders and find one that's comfortable for you. Okay. Hannah Banana. Hey guys, so how much should we be giving up front? Just enough for materials, right? And then draws from there with some held back, correct? It depends on the subcontractor. Every subcontractor is different. Like framing, they don't supply any materials generally unless it's just nails. And so they may throw an invoice at you after the first walls are up, and then you give them that draw. But it might be, if it's like tile work or windows or something like that, you've got to purchase materials first, like a roofer does. Then they might ask for 25% up or 30% up, and that's fine. You can give them that. And then you want to find out their suppliers. You don't need to do that if you trust the contract, but it's nice to know, because sometimes suppliers will file a notice of commencement on your property, which is a pre-lien, and then they can hold that pre-lien until they're paid. So it might be good to just talk with your suppliers about that. Lumber yards, big supply houses, they're very privy to this, and they will file a pre-lien when you order materials. And they'll do that just before they send it. And then you'll need to, when you pay it, they're pretty good at releasing that information. If not, then you ask them to sign a lien release check, and it releases that lien. So, Peyton. That's so true, Keith. And should I build a duplex, single family, or multi-generational like you suggest? What's your recommendation if I chose to get your program and go to become a GC profit? It's going to be easier to sell a multi-generational home than a duplex, for sure, because it's a home that if you take your time to design and it's attractive and fun, and there's a monetized revenue generator inside that home, that's going to sell much faster than a duplex, unless you want to rent the duplex out yourself. And watch the videos we put out. The home we're building, that's going to be pretty cool. And if that model fits you, then that might be one to consider.
Also, you can find land easier for multi-generational than.
Yeah, you can find land easier for multi-generational. Duplex is a multi-family situation, and that's more of a commercial near other apartments and complexes, and that's going to be a headache.
It has to be zoned for that.
It has to be zoned for it. Okay. I'm in a very high tax area. Is the basement worth the cost of the sake for a square footage tax savings? I would do a slab and a bigger house, but taxes could be very high. Taxes are going to be lower on the basement than on the main floor, not by much, but by a little. And so
use attic trusses too.
And I use attic trusses, and I don't go a full second story. I go what's called a story and a half. And a story and a half is what an attic truss does. I don't go the full height on the second story. And that does lower your taxes a little bit too, because they don't factor in the square footage from the bottom. They factor it in as it's measured on the inside.
Yeah, 6 feet or 4 feet.
Yeah, JC, pros and cons of metal and shingle roofing. How much more expensive for aluminum roofing for a 3,000 square foot house? 3,000 square foot house, if it's on a single level, it's going to be more. If it's on 2 levels, then the roof shrinks because everything's under 2 floors. It depends on how many squares. Is it 20 or 30 squares? But a square is a 10 by 10 section. So figure that a square of roofing can be anywhere from $250 to $600 a square foot, a 10 by 10 square section. And if it's a high pitch roof, that goes up. If it's a lower pitch roof, it goes down. I've found that aluminum shingles can be anywhere from 80 to 150 more a square on average than like asphalt or tile. But it's a superior roof, and it's going to be up there for a long time. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that I don't like to touch something in my lifetime more than once. So if I can put a roof on a house that I know I won't have to touch again, and my kids will never have to touch again, to me, that's an advantage. Having to take off an asphalt roof 3 layers in less than 30 years, I'm not a fan of that. You can put up to 3 layers on a home. After that, you have to tear everything off and put the new layer on. And that 3rd layer, that's not fun. I don't know if you've ever taken off roofs before, but having to strip off a roof is not fun at all. And so just imagine stripping off an aluminum shingle roof in 150 years. All the recycled, everything you take off the roof is recycled, 100% of it. And you could probably, in today's dollars, if I stripped off all the roof on my house right here, I could probably make about $800 in recycled material. How many people can say that about a roof? Not many people. So I'm durability, lasting quality. I don't want to handle it more than once. And I've gone into restaurants. This is a really good example. We go into this Mexican restaurant in town, and you have to order it here, and then you tell them what they want, and it passes it down. And then you have to tell that person what you want. Then they do their little thing, and then you get down at the end, and you have to tell that person what you want again. And it's all this over communication. Now you need to just make that communication once. They know what it is, and it moves through the system. You don't need to have to handle a roof more than once. And I would never put asphalt shingles on a roof. Sorry, I won't do it. Josh, thanks for answering my question about the mesh waterproofing the deck before inspection. What about the foundation to wall transition around the house? Can that be done before inspection? Yes, you can. In fact, they will think highly of you for having that done. So get that done. Just go 4 inches up and 4 inches down and coat it and goop it in there really thick. Prime it, roll the mesh, prime it again, really goop it on. And then the finish coat is going to be the same color as whatever finish you're going to put on the house. And you can have that tinted that color. And you do that as a finish coat before you start putting all your other stuff on the house. Okay. Okay, Honey Caffeine. With polished concrete floors, some people suggest using fiberglass instead of rebar. Your thoughts? I'm excited about rebar. The only problem is it's hard to bend. You have to have a torch to bend it. So it makes it difficult for on-site use, but it's lightweight. And the tensile strength is pretty strong, and it doesn't conduct electricity, which in the future might be a great factor because it's not going to have that conductivity from the earth into the home. So it's a real plus. And on top of that, if you're in a very high moisture content area, rebar does rust because concrete is absorptive. It can absorb water. So over time, rebar, if you've gone over bridges in cold climates where there's a lot of snow, you'll see the rebar exposed because it's close to the surface of the concrete. And that concrete gets wet. They coat some rebar, but I've read some reports that the coating on the rebar doesn't last very long. In fact, if there's a little divot, a paint divot on that rebar, it can actually work inside that divot and it can start to corrode that metal over time, which is why the fiberglass rebar would last much longer than regular steel rebar. So it might be a little more costly, but it is a little more difficult to work with. And you can talk with your subcontractor and see if he's okay using it. Okay. Swan Lake builds. My trusses and zip sheathing are up. Cool. For plumbing, I was going to use PEX, but I decided to use CPVC in my concrete slab construction. Was this a mistake? As long as it's in a sleeve, you're okay. If it's not in a sleeve and it's directly exposed to the concrete, then you could have some problem over time. So I hope you put it in a sleeve, and if not, then you could have some problems. So I don't know of anyone who would put plumbing without a sleeve under a slab today. We just don't do it. So hopefully that's what you did. So Carissa, I said that right? Carissa. Okay. Do you have any thoughts, insights regarding attaching a greenhouse to the south side of a house? In planning phase, this would be an add-on a few years down the road. Love your greenhouse. That's a really good idea. But in order to plan for it, I would put a ledger board over the top of windows or over the top of where you're going to put that greenhouse. This is called passive solar. You're going to generate heat in the greenhouse in the wintertime, and that heat is going to pile up against the house on that side of the house, and it's going to really offset some heating utility costs, especially in the wintertime. But it's planning for it. I have a video. It's called it's a bump out. I did a build in the backyard, and I knew that I was going to put a porch on the front of that sometime down the road. So what we did is we put a nice 2x8 ledger board up there and lagged it in really nice. And then we actually stuccoed right over it. I even put a flashing up there on top of it. So when we finally did the porch, I just slid the OSB right underneath that flashing, and it was slick, and I didn't have to cut into any drywall. So it's how well you plan for it down the road and how you're going to build that. You don't want to have to attach a greenhouse to an existing facade. I would have some sort of a ledger up at the top that I can connect a roof or truss or some system to. My dad had that idea. He actually manufactured plywood, and he cut arches out of the plywood, and then he glued them together and built this frame structure. And he was going to build a greenhouse and attach it to the home. He never finished it, but I remembered the idea, and it was going to be on the east side of the house. It would capture the early morning sun. A really good idea, but it's that ledger where you can attach it, put a Simpson hanger there, and then connect whatever build material you're going to use to create that greenhouse, making it easy down the road, not harder. Okay. Michael, for anyone in California, 10% upfront of the total contract is the limit. Yep, that's a state law in California. So they can only ask for 10% upfront. Okay. It's probably because there's a lot of corruption that took place over time. Matthew, thank you. If I have time, number one, is it smart to do construction permanent mortgage loan one-time close, or should we do a formal construction loan, then switch to mortgage? Good question. There's a couple of options to think about. I would do the one-time close if you can lock in a good interest rate. But if interest rates are not that great, you can get the construction to perm, and then if you choose to refinance, then you refinance later. But the advantage with the construction to perm, it's a one-time close.
There's higher fees though.
There's higher fees, but it's a one-time close.
And you know your interest rate.
And you know your interest rate. You can get it locked in. And so it's nice when interest rates were low and you thought that they were going to go up. Oh, you want to lock that in now. But if interest rates go down, which the inclination is that they're not going to go up any higher, they'll stay flat or they'll go down.
But they've been going up.
They've been going up lately because of the administration is battling with the Federal Reserve right now. Federal Reserve refuses to lower interest rates, even though the current president wants them down.
It's been a year we thought the interest rates were going to come down.
Yeah, it's been a year, my wife says, since we thought interest rates were going to come down, and they haven't come down at all.
Sometimes it is just good to lock it in because you have the option to. I wasn't going to come on today, but should I?
And my wife's going to say something.
It's really hard, and we don't have a crystal ball, right, to see what the interest rate's going to be in the future. It's just a matter of what risk you want to take. The one-time close, the fees are higher, but taking that risk, we just don't know what the interest rate. You can do the one-time close, and then if the interest rate does drop, you can refi, which is going to cost you more money again. There are some programs out there that will let you do one-time interest rate drop. See if any of your banks that are doing construction loans, see if they'll allow that. Because I think that's another fee too, to give you that option. And it's just what you feel comfortable with. It's so hard to decide that. It's a big question. So, because fees are involved, there's no one answer.
Yeah, it's tough. That's why I'm a big fan of trying to get as much paid off before you even start to build as you possibly can, and you're saving that interest on that amount.
But you still have to get a loan. You still have to decide if it's a one-time close or not.
Yeah. By the way, I'm on the Patreon, and somebody was asking me for the Discord, and somebody was asking me about that framing crew that travels around in an RV. I gave that information. It's in the Patreon group and Discord group. Sorry, Discord. I get those two mixed up. So it's in the Discord group. I put it up last night for those that are asking, and it's now available. And I will add that subcontractor to the list of resources, and I'll upload that as well. They can frame pretty much anywhere in Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, Wyoming, Montana, Oregon, pretty much the Western United States. And if it's a super big job, they might go in the Midwest or back east. But I'm trying to lock these people in and see if I can't get them to people. So, and he's a really good price on his costs. TC, the gusset plates on trusses pop off in fires and roofs collapse quickly. As a firefighter, they warn against trusses for this reason. Do you have any opinions on avoiding trusses for this reason? No. The gusset plates, you mean the brackets that hold them together? I'm thinking that's what you're thinking about. They're rolled in place and they've got prongs and they pinch against the wood. I can see how they might pop off, but I'm willing to bet that they pop off because they got the wrong roof material on the roof. It's probably a tile roof or an asphalt roof with a lot of oil in it, and it's just burning and getting super hot. Most fires, they attack the roof because embers get under a tile or a low profile Spanish tile. They get underneath there. They land on that tar paper. Wind hits it, and it starts to burn from the roof down. But if you can stop that from happening, either with a standing seam or fully enclosed aluminum shingle roof, that would actually help that and stop that substantially. The other cause is it gets underneath the eave. And then the little ember can get under an eave that's got a vent in it and work its way up into the hot, dry attic of a truss system. then it can start on fire there, which is why in California they make eaves or vented eaves illegal in a lot of areas, specifically for that reason. Your roof is your prime target for a lot of burning. So good question. Yeah.
So there's a discussion going on. I'm going to show you two. I hope you're okay with the discussion.
Yeah, discussion's
This
fine.
is from Will.
Keith, I'll disagree with your advice to Chris about building a gable and single floor house for Northwest Missouri. Hip roof is the best way. I meant hip roof. I'm sorry. I meant a hip roof because that would avoid being a wind sail. You're right. So I got hip roof and gable roof mixed up. A hip roof would be much better for you in high winds.
So show them. Is there a way to show them?
A hip roof is like a regular roof has a gable that looks like that at the end. A hip roof, it's when it's smashed down about like that. And so you don't have a whole roof. Your siding of your material doesn't go up the full height of the roof. It stops on that top plate on the main level. And then that roof is pinched down. So research, there's a course in my, a class in the course that I offer, and it talks about roofs and their pitch. And it gives you the different types of roofs, gives you the different types of gables and stuff like that. Research that. When you get in there, you'll see what I'm talking about. I got confused between gable. Thanks for bringing that up, Will. Appreciate that.
Okay. This is just Brady's opinion.
Brady, also mortgage rates are set by the bond market, not the Fed. True. So even if Fed does drop it, does not mean mortgage rates will go down. Yeah, the bond market has been taking a real hit lately. And it used to be like a tier one situation where putting money was, where people put their money, but it's not right now because the rates are not that great because the market doesn't look good far off in the distance. So they're increasing their rates on the bond market to draw investors in, and that just shoots the interest rate up for everything else. So they're correlated. The bond market is really correlated with the interest rates. Okay, Matthew, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you both so much. You're welcome. Our pleasure. Our pleasure. One thing I want to keep in mind is that I'm curious to know the weather pattern in your particular areas. We've got, today was our first real hot day. And so what is it? May 22nd. Did you guys have longer, colder winters this year? We had a very mild winter in our area, but it didn't get hot until.
We had a couple of weeks that was hot and then cold.
Yeah, it was up and down, up and down.
Mm-hmm. But we've never been this cool.
We've never been this cool this late in the game. And it's just kind of interesting. But we didn't have a lot of moisture. And so it's been great to build in with not having to fight the moisture, because that is, I'm on two mountains and I'm dealing with a lot of uncertainties on weather. I'm just curious what people are experiencing out there.
Put it in the comments what your weather is.
Yeah, and put it in your comments what your weather's like in your particular area.
Here's one more question.
There's a channel I follow. It's called something 30. Something 30. I forget the name of it. There's a lot of really interesting people out there doing weather, not your typical weather channel, but they're doing a little deeper dive on weather. And Farmer's Almanac is really, really good at that. They actually incorporate a lot more in studying weather than listening to a Doppler radar person on the newscast kind of tell you what's happening in front of your face. They actually factor in the sun and its flaring and its cycles and all of that stuff. And as a result, they've been very accurate, much better at predicting the weather. So I would look into the Farmer's Almanac, and I should have looked at it last fall, but I didn't. But that's something to consider.
We got a question.
Okay, question. We'll take a question. MJ, is that right? MG. Are there alternative septic systems if the land doesn't perk? Yeah, it's called a shallow system. And you talk with your geotech engineer and ask them about a shallow system. What that basically means is hopefully you have natural gravity that's going to flow to a shallow system. And they really literally put it on the ground. But before they do that, they put gravel and a lot of other material in there. So it has some place to go. So it's a shallow system, which means you can't drive on it. You'll actually see the humps on the dirt. You'll see where it's going to go. And you really can't plant any trees there at all. Same thing as a real septic. I'm doing a septic up north, and I just found out today that we have to go down another 2 feet. So that septic is probably going to be close to 8 feet deep. We had to get below some clay material so it would perk. And I'd rather go deep than shallow, because once I get really, really deep, it's so far out of mind that I know I'm never going to have any problem. It's just, can you afford the cost to go super deep like that? That's a thing to consider. And how easy is it to dig? That's also something to consider. Okay, next question. Brady, I'm at 6,000 feet in Wyoming Rockies. That's where I'm building right now, 6,600 feet. We had a very warm, wet winter, easy to build when it's colder, because everything stays frozen.
Yeah.
It's better than the mud. Oh, I hate mud. I try to get going as soon as I can to avoid it in the winter and in the springtime. So, yeah, good comment. Val Smith, East Coast here is chilly and has been pretty wet, much more rain this time than actually the last 2 years. Yeah, there's a lot of moisture back east. That's true. And Honey says it's raining several times every week, so our area is too wet to start building in Southwest Michigan. Interesting. Maybe get some lake effect water there. It rained a ton at the beginning of spring, then got super dry. Now we're back to normal. Midwestern scary spring storms, Kansas City. Okay, beautiful area, Kansas City. I'm thinking about buying your courses. Will there be any Memorial Day sale on your course? I don't have to ask my wife.
Well, yeah, I'll put something together. I didn't think about it.
My wife will put something together. Look forward to put it out there.
Let's see. Should we do something that if they're watching this, then they get the special?
Whatever you decide.
Okay.
She's the marketing expert, not me.
Okay, let me think about it. Okay,
Sure.
then.
She'll probably do, if you're subscribed, she can do a blast through the email. So make sure you go to the home site selection, get that. Then we have your email, and then we will just notify students in our program and let them know about it. Okay. And she may just put a
I might put it
ad
on
together on
YouTube.
YouTube.
She's on YouTube. I'll put it on YouTube.
Okay.
If Brady has.
Brady, let's see here. Keith, how many builds do you have going at any given time? Not that many. We're breaking ground on 2. I'm working on some other designs. I was really busy last year. I'm trying to just focus more on production and content. And so I'm wanting to have more fun with my content that I create. And I'm at the site every day.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. Let's end there. And now we'll be here next week. Again, like, subscribe, do all that. Go to howtobuildyourownhome.com. That link right there. Take the First Steps course. It is the best in the market. It really helps you see a 5,000-foot approach to what owner building is all about. And it's very effective. And I strongly recommend taking that course. And at the end of that course, there's a coupon code for the self-managed course. So a lot of students don't see that coupon code. It's there. Make sure you see the last course in the First Steps course. And
maybe we'll give a really big discount on the First Steps course.
Yeah.
And then you can get the discount for the self-managed.
Well, you're the marketing
Okay.
person. So my wife will figure that out. So we're gonna end it there. It was a good hour today. You guys take care, and we'll be back here next Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You guys take care. Bye.